Well, welcome everyone to Chosen Generation. Today, we're here with a very special guest, someone who's been in life-threatening situations. He's faced gangs, he's faced all sorts of things. We're here with former FBI agent Bob Hamer. Thank you for joining us today on Chosen Generation, sir.
Chuchu, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. This is interesting.
Awesome. Well, so guys, Bob Hamer, he used to be in the FBI, and he was actually an undercover cop, which meant that he'd have to portray different roles in the FBI. He had to pretend to be maybe a pedophile or pretend to be maybe a gangbanger. So first of all, tell me, when did you get into the FBI and how did you find that calling?
You know, it's interesting, Chuchu. I grew up watching cop shows on TV and kind of had an interest in law enforcement, but then I also had an interest in the law. And I spent 4 years on active duty in the Marine Corps as an attorney. But what I found was that being a lawyer just wasn't that exciting for me because every criminal case that I was involved in came down to whether the search was legal, whether the confession is admissible. It was always a procedural issue and never a whodunit. So TV had kind of, I guess you could say, led me astray, thinking that being a prosecutor or defense counsel was going to be an exciting life, and it wasn't. And it's kind of a long story, but I'm going to get into it. You can cut me off if you want. Mm-hmm. But there was an ad in the Los Angeles Times that the CIA was looking for case officers. Now, I was stationed at Camp Pendleton outside of San Diego, California, and I saw this ad and I thought, boy, this could be interesting. CIA, yeah, that certainly sounds a lot more exciting than being in court. So I went to I responded to the ad. I was notified to go down to the federal building in San Diego. I walked into the room. It was a relatively large room, but there were only two pieces of furniture, two chairs. And I was like, well, this is sort of strange. And all of a sudden, this guy walks in and he's got a scar from ear to ear. And I am thinking, this is so cool. I mean, you know, this guy's got to have stories to tell. And I'm thinking, this has to be so much more exciting than being a lawyer. Well, we had the interview. I can't really recall much about the interview because I was sort of focused on this scar from ear to ear. I left the interview, went back to Camp Pendleton. A few weeks later, I received a plain bond piece of stationery telling me that I had passed the initial recruiting phase and I was to fly back to Washington, D.C. Now, at the time, this is long before 9/11, so they told me that to pay cash for everything, to fly under an assumed name, and not tell anyone what I was doing. So this just fed into my excitement. I mean, this is kind of cool. I didn't tell my wife what I was doing. I just told her I was going back to D.C. on business. I didn't tell the Marine Corps what I was doing. I just told them I was going to take a couple of days off. I head back to Washington, go through a couple different interviews, some testing. They were testing for current affairs, geography, general aptitude, language aptitude. And I left, came back to San Diego, California, back in the courtroom, prosecuting cases, defending cases, all Marines that had gotten into trouble. Get another piece of paper. This piece of paper says, come back another time. We want you for the second phase of our recruiting process. And I did the same thing, paid cash, didn't tell anybody what I was doing, told my wife I was going back to DC for some meetings, told the Marine Corps I was taking leave, went back, had more meetings. At this meeting, things went well, and the guy said, look, you can tell your wife what you're doing, but you can't tell anybody else. So I came back and I told my wife, I said, Debbie, we're going to be spies. I got to tell you what I've been doing. This is really exciting. And she knew I was kind of frustrated in the courtroom, and she got us excited about it too. In fact, we thought we were moving forward. we went to a French restaurant. I'd never been to a French restaurant, but we thought that was kind of exotic. Since you're going to be a spy, you should be eating somewhere other than McDonald's. So we go to this French restaurant. Now I go back for a third set of meetings. And on the third set of meetings, I go to Langley, which is CIA headquarters. I take a polygraph, and then they give me a personality psychological exam where they measure you from a 0 to a 10. A 0 could be spend the rest of his life on a deserted island. A 10 had to be constantly surrounded by people. And I skewed my answers a little bit, thinking I could outsmart them. And I ended up scoring a 0 on their personality.
Oh,
and
wow.
my wife tells me that and the psychologist, when he came in to go over the test results with me, said, look, I've never seen a 0 personality. And my wife to this day will tell you that I apparently the only person ever declared a 0 personality by the federal government. But it turned out that it wasn't meant to be, and the CIA didn't hire me. They didn't like 0 personalities. I had also applied to the FBI, and I had taken the written exam for the FBI. Had gone in for the oral interviews. I had done well. I was told that I had done very well, but there was a 1-year hiring freeze. Now, Chuchu, I'm getting out of the Marine Corps. I can't stay in. Even if I wanted to stay in, they weren't going to allow me. They wouldn't allow me to change my military occupational specialty. If I wanted to stay in, I was going to have to remain a lawyer. I didn't want to be a lawyer. So I'm getting out. And it's Monday. My parents were in town. I actually slept on the couch. And that night on the couch, I prayed to God. And I said, God, look, we tithe. You're going to get more money if I stick with this job. I'd actually been offered a job up in Los Angeles. I said, well, you'll get more money, but I really wish that the FBI or the CIA would call, because I'm getting out on Friday. In less than a week, I'm out of the FBI. I'm out of the Marine Corps. The very next morning, the phone rings, and my wife answers it, and she comes in and she says, Bob, it's the FBI. And I go on the phone. The guy says, are you still interested in the FBI? I said, absolutely. He said, we just had an opening in the September class. Can you report back to Quantico, Virginia in 30 days? And I said, absolutely, yes. And I'm convinced that God was waiting for me just to surrender, to put it in his hands, to quit trying to manipulate this for myself. And, but he probably needed a 0 personality in the FBI. So it turned out to be an ideal fit for me. You mentioned I'd done some undercover work. So I spent much of my 26-year career in various undercover roles. I've been the contract killer. I've been an international arms dealer. I've been a pedophile. I've been a drug dealer. I've worked as a high roller. I've worked gangs. I've just had some amazing experiences as an undercover agent. And when the times really got tough, I thought back to that answer of prayer when it looked like there was no way I was going to get hired by the CIA, and it was going to be at least a year before the FBI would come calling. And within 12 hours, they called.
So if I can jump in here, did your faith at all change when you joined the FBI? Did you become stronger in your faith or weaker in your faith, or was it just kind of the same after you joined?
No, I actually think it became stronger, but maybe it's because I had to rely more on him and on the gifts that he gave me. There were a lot of things I couldn't do. I wasn't capable of doing, but on those gifts that he did give to me, I was able to develop those. And look, I've been in some pretty tough situations, and he was able to extricate me out of those situations. And I think it was many times it was truly an answer to prayer. I was fortunate. I have a Bible believing wife who's a strong prayer warrior and a faith warrior. And she was at home on her knees praying for me when I was, quite frankly, doing some pretty stupid things.
So what is one situation when you look back that your faith really helped you get through it? Like, what was a moment when your belief in God was what helped you go through?
Well, this isn't a direct answer to that, but I'm going to tell you a story, and it's where God was there. And I was involved with an international heroin trafficker. He was during the course of this investigation, we seized heroin in Thailand, in Frankfurt, Germany, in Montreal, Canada, in Toronto, and then eventually in Los Angeles, California. I was in the middle of negotiations with him. We were purchasing 2 kilos of China white heroin. At the time, the heroin was going for about $250,000 a kilo. So I literally had $500,000 in a briefcase. The initial plans were to meet in a motel room. He refused to meet in a motel room and told me that I had to come down to the lobby of the Airport Hilton Hotel, which was just outside of Los Angeles International Airport. I am literally sitting in the lobby of the hotel, and I'd flashed $500,000 in cash to this man. So he saw it. He said during that time that his partner was in the lobby, his partner had a gun, and that if anything went wrong, that I was going to be the first person they'd kill. You wouldn't believe this if you saw it in a movie, but my first year of law school, I lived with a couple in Cincinnati, Ohio. We attended the same church. They had a spare bedroom. They allowed me to stay in the spare bedroom. They were wonderful people. They were Tupperware distributors. They were vivacious. They were outgoing. They were backslapping. They were just a fun couple to be around. That's Cincinnati, Ohio. 2,000 miles away, I'm in Los Angeles, sitting in the lobby of a hotel. Had just flashed $500,000 to an international heroin trafficker who told me that if anything went wrong, I was the first person they were going to kill. And who walked into the lobby of that hotel? The couple I lived with in Cincinnati, Ohio.
That's incredible.
And the lady saw me. I kind of leaned back in my chair and sort of gave her this look that this is not the time for grips and grins. I was literally wearing a body recorder. It was taped. The microphone was taped to my chest. When we went back and listened to the tape again, you could actually hear my heart pounding.
Man,
it was that kind of an adrenaline rush. And she realized something was wrong. So she directed her husband to the elevators, and they just kept going. That within about 10 minutes, the heroin showed up. The FBI rushed in. We arrested 3 international heroin traffickers. That night, my wife and I had dinner with Pat and Don and kind of chuckled over this whole situation. And Pat said, you know, Bob, I know you were an FBI agent. I know you do dangerous things. And when that pilot on that airplane said, ladies and gentlemen, we're preparing to land in Los Angeles, I just prayed to God. And I said, God, I don't know what Bob's doing today, but please watch over him and protect him, because I know he does some dangerous things. And I'm kind of convinced that had I not been on her heart, had she not been thinking about me, had she not been praying about me, had she just kind of stumbled onto me without this prayer, they probably would have rushed over and given me a big hug and kissed me on the cheek and said, how's the FBI? And that would have been the end of it. And in fact, I may not be on your podcast right now.
that's
So
powerful.
I think that was clearly an answer to prayer. It was God responding and protecting me in ways that, you know, at the time I didn't know was going to happen.
Wow. So if she had not prayed for you when she felt to pray for you, you don't believe that you would have even survived?
I don't. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's hard to tell what would have happened, but certainly because I was on her heart, she was thinking about me.
Yeah, I
And
believe that.
that, and I'm sure you and your viewers have had situations where you just stumbled onto somebody at the store and you just all of a sudden, blurt out, "Hey, Chuchu, how you doing? How's things going at school?" or something like that, and not even thinking about it. But because she recognized that I was in Los Angeles, that I was probably doing some dangerous things because God had placed her on my heart at that time. That yeah, it worked out for me, and we seized 2 kilos of China white heroin and arrested 3 international heroin dealers.
Man, that's pretty crazy stuff. So
Yep. But you wouldn't, it's one of those things you wouldn't believe if you saw it on a TV show,
not a
but
chance.
that's what happens in the real world.
So besides that, what's a time when you really thought your life was in danger? Like what's a time when you thought this could be it? I could die right now.
Well, I mean, my very first undercover assignment, um, we were targeting um, a mafia associate who was a very experienced thief. He was he was stealing artwork out of homes and art galleries. He was stealing high end jewelry and silver out of homes, and we were targeting him. He actually took me. We went over to Arizona. We went to a mob run restaurant. In that restaurant, they took us in the back room after we'd had a very nice dinner. And the owner of the restaurant pulled out a tray and started cutting lines of cocaine. And I was relatively new to the FBI. I was really new to undercover work. I had never gone to any undercover school. We didn't, before that, I mean, at that time, we didn't have an actual training program for undercover agents. It was just kind of, hey, you want to work undercover, you can work undercover. And so he started chopping up the lines. And when it came time to me, I just passed. And I told him, don't quite know where I came up with the story other than God planted the seed. And I just told him that I was allergic to cane products, that I couldn't even do lidocaine or novocaine at the dentist or at the doctor if I had a problem, that it causes heart palpitations and actually could bring on a heart attack. So if you want me to, I just can't do the cane. Well, he pulls a gun out and points it at me and says, "You're going to do it, or I'm going to blow your brains out." Fortunately, the main target of our investigation was a health nut, and he just said, "Joe, I'm not going to do it either." So uh, Joe put the gun away, and we passed the tray to 2 other guys and let them do the lines. But I believe that was a situation where I think God intervened and and gave me the right words at the right time in order uh, to to convince this guy that, one, I wasn't a cop, but also that there was no sense in killing me.
Wow. That's pretty intense stuff for sure.
Well, that's the kind of thing maybe you would see on a TV show, but
Yeah. So as an undercover cop, you've had to portray some, a lot of different roles, and none of them, are very good. You've had to act as an arms dealer, you said, or a pedophile. So how did you reconcile that while still being Christian?
oh, that really wasn't an issue. I have to tell you. I mean, there are several examples in the Bible of where heroes of the Bible, Rahab, when she lied to protect people, the uh, the Hebrew midwives when they lied to the king to protect the babies, and so there were instances in the Bible where for the greater good, for as part of God's plan, that people lied. So I didn't have trouble with actually lying, but I think being a Christian made me a, a better undercover agent, because you have to admit, if you've been around law enforcement officers, most cops see the world in yes or no, good or evil. You either broke the law or you didn't break the law. So uh, if you break the law, you get arrested, you go to jail. What I found was that in my undercover work, that you can't see everything as black and white. You've got to see the gray. You've got to see that middle. And I do believe that even though I was dealing with some pretty horrendous individuals, they were all still creatures of God. And I was able to latch on to the good of that person. Uh, Perfect example, we convicted a pedophile that was a PhD psychologist. And he was a funny guy. He had a good sense of humor. So I think that most people, certainly most law enforcement officers, when they find out that someone's a pedophile, they've already made up their mind. They're ready to use their own set of rules and justice to make sure that this guy never harms another child. And the bad guys can smell that, just like a dog smells fear. The bad guys can smell hatred or disdain. And I believe that I was fortunate because God allowed me to see the gray. He allowed me to see one good feature of this person. And as the undercover agent, I could latch on to that and focus on that good feature and not focus on the crimes that he was committing. And because of that, the bad guys never caught on. They never realized that I was an FBI agent, that I was undercover, because they just saw me as someone that accepted them for who they were.
Yeah, that's really powerful because, like you said, these are pretty terrible people, but because you are a Christian and you understand that God loves everyone and He made everyone, despite, their obvious shortcomings and flaws, you still were able to care about them and understand that they're more than just a sinner. They're also somebody that can be saved and that God made. So that's a pretty powerful lesson.
Yeah, yeah. We had uh, we, we had an interesting situation with an informant that actually agreed to cooperate because she knew that I was a Christian, and she made a big deal out of that. And as a result of that, she came to believe as well. So um, I think I, there were times I think people were shocked when they found out I went to church, that I was a Christian. I admit that, but I think there were other times that there was something maybe a little different about me that people saw, even the good guys and the bad guys.
Mm, yeah. So I've heard that one of your most uh, probably disgusting assignments, if I can say, was when you had to be an undercover agent in NAMBLA. Tell us a bit
Yeah,
about that.
yeah. NAMBLA is the North American Man Boy Love Association. It's a group of men who are sexually attracted to boys, depending on. Usually, it's pretty specific. Either it's prepubescent boys, meaning 5 to 12-year-olds, or it's post-pubescent, meaning 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds. But I was in that organization for 3 years, not on a daily basis, but I had joined the organization, and then when we finally made our arrest and took the thing down, it had been almost 3 years that I'd been part of NAMBLA. But it was disgusting, as you said, because I knew what these men had done. I had to sit there and listen to them talk about what they wanted to do to little boys, some of them even bragging about what they'd done in the past to little boys. So it was it was difficult to do that, but I believe that God gave me guess you could say, it a goofed up brain. I mean, I could compartmentalize, and so I could be the contract killer, and posing as a contract killer in an undercover capacity, and then teach Sunday school. I could be the drug. I could be buying drugs and then go out and coach my son's little league team, or go to my daughter's performances, and just be kind of a regular citizen. So I was able to compartmentalize between being the father, the coach, the son, the husband, the Sunday school teacher, and the international arms dealer, or the pedophile, or whatever role that I was playing. But the NAMBLA case was psychologically the most difficult. It wasn't a situation where I was actually fearful that physically I might be assaulted. Even if I were discovered, that it would only be a matter of messing up the investigation. But yeah, it was psychologically, it was the toughest, because quite frankly, I was ready to mete out my own justice to some of these guys when they explained the things that they were doing to kids and what they wanted to do.
Yeah, I guess that's where, you have to have self-control, because to be honest, if I was in that situation, I don't know if I could just hear them talking about that stuff without just throwing a punch or something.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and again, you're right. And I think in normal situations, I would have felt that way too. If I had been in a public setting and somebody had been talking like that, I probably would have thrown a punch. But I knew what my job was. I knew what the role was. I knew what the ultimate goal was, and that was to get them convicted, to get them registered as sex offenders, to get them sent to jail, some of them for a very long time. And I had to keep that ultimate goal in mind as we were pursuing the investigation. So, yeah, had I not done that, I just walled off and hit a guy. Now I'm charged with assault. I'm the guy that probably going to jail, and all that guy has is probably a broken jaw, and he moves on and still continues to harm children. So we have to look at the greater good and the long-term benefits of supplement our immediate desires for what is down the road.
Yeah, you can even apply that spiritually too. Like sometimes you have to give up things with the goal of making it to heaven. So that's a pretty good lesson to learn from that.
No, absolutely. You're right. I mean, this is what life is all about. The idea that, look, there are not that many people that really enjoy going to school. But if you have your ultimate goal, then I've got to get that degree. I've got to get that education. I've got to get that trade skill. I have to get that skill as a tradesman to be able to do the job. And so I've got to do it. If you want to be a Marine, you got to go through boot camp. If you want to be a Navy SEAL, you got to go through BUDS training. I mean, there are things you have to do. You have to sacrifice. You have to supplement your immediate desires. You have to appreciate deferred gratification and know that it's there. Look, the Bible, just because you become a Christian doesn't mean that the rest of your life is all roses. It's obvious that Jesus doesn't. Jesus says when times of trouble come, not if. And we're still going to face that, but our ultimate goal is life everlasting, not the perfect job, not the perfect home, not the perfect car here on earth. It's what is waiting for us in eternity.
Yeah, that is such an important lesson. And yeah, you learned it from being in the FBI partially. So besides that, were there any lessons you learned from being a secret agent that you now apply to like regular life?
You mean like always checking my mirrors when I'm driving a car to make sure no one's following me? I, I just think I joke about the fact that my favorite class in college was a course called deviant behavior. And I think that God was preparing me in that class because throughout my FBI career, I say that I either met everyone that we studied in that class or I portrayed every personality disorder that we studied in that class. And I think that uh, I would like to think it was because I was a Christian, but I was able to look at people in a different light than the way most people looked at them, and that is something that I don't always remember, but I try to remember
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
recognize that, hey, maybe there's a reason this person is behaving the way they are. Maybe they've just had a bad day. Maybe there is some type of chemical imbalance, and we just can't be that quick to judge. And
Mhm.
we need to understand their situation and their circumstances.
Yeah. That's some good stuff right there for sure. Yeah, so you have some books out. Tell us a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I the first book I wrote is called The Last Undercover, and it details my infiltration under NAMBLA and about a dozen other undercover cases. So it's if you're interested in true crime and seeing it from an undercover agent standpoint, it's an interesting book. I was truly blessed, and when that first book came out, I I was able to go down to Balboa Hospital in San Diego, where the combat wounded were, and was able to meet with a lot of guys. And my wife and I, we kind of joke about it now, but when we lived in Los Angeles, we attended a church, and there was a rather attractive lady that sat in front of us, and she had the digit, the top digit, or the top knuckle of her index finger had been amputated for some reason, and she would often sit in front of us and put her arm up on the back of the chair, and we'd see this finger that was, only had, had the top part of the finger missing. And it was kind of like, oh, what a shame, this beautiful lady. Well, once I started going down to Balboa and going into those rooms and taking my books, and essentially was, hey, I'm Bob Hamer. I former Marine, retired FBI agent. I can't sing or dance, but I wrote a book, and would give them a book. And we met double and triple amputees. We've had them over to our house. We specifically bought a house so that these guys can come in their wheelchairs and be able to move around in the house and not have to go up steep driveways or go up steps in order to get to
Oh,
our house. And but that also evolved into another book and about their stories, helping the impact that this war on terror has had on the wives and the families, and that turned out to be a great book. I actually wrote that with Oliver North. Maybe your generation is too young to know Ollie North, but he was infamous and famous. I mean, he's a patriot, but was involved in Iran Contra, was a lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps, and now is a best-selling author. And I've been very fortunate and blessed to work with him. A real believer, a strong believer. And
awesome.
so we put we have a couple books. In fact, we have one coming out in May, and a novel that's coming out in May. And I've worked with Tim Lee, who was a Marine who lost both legs in Vietnam, and now is an evangelist. And I
Wow.
helped him write his story, and that book has done very well. It's called Born on the 5th of July, and he talks about his journey. Preacher's kid, but a troublemaker as a preacher's kid. Ran away from home, caused his parents all kinds of trouble, and ended up stepping on a landmine and blowing off both of his legs in Vietnam. And he talks about his struggle and how that led him back to the Lord. And now he's an evangelist that virtually every weekend is going to a different church to tell his story. So
Incredible.
your viewers or your, that's a book I would recommend, Born on the 5th of July. So yeah, I've been fortunate. I have very few skills. Usually if there's something to be done around the house, my wife does it because she knows I'm going to mess it up. But I've been fortunate to write a couple books and get them published.
Cool. Running out of time here. So before we have to go, what's your biggest advice for somebody who's younger but wants to get into law enforcement or the military? Because I considered joining the FBI or CAA. So what's your advice?
Well, I think definitely, we're talking two different career journeys here between the military and law enforcement, but get your education and learn to read and write well. I think that's so important. I really encourage students that are interested in law enforcement, don't take criminal justice. I mean, you don't have to major in criminal justice to be a cop or an FBI agent. In the FBI, we look for people that have strong computer skills. We look for people that have strong language skills, particularly those that can speak a foreign language fluently. Obviously, you have to be able to read and write and speak. So it's important to know good grammar. You can always dumb it down in an undercover capacity, but when you're on the stand, when you're testifying, you don't want to come across as that dummy. But for the FBI, you need a minimum of a bachelor's degree. So get your college degree. CIA, you're going to need a minimum of a bachelor's degree. The military, you can enlist without a degree, but if you want to be an officer, you need that college degree. And there's some great programs out there. But look at it, examine it, pray about it. Right now I teach at Liberty University online, and Liberty University's motto is Champions for Christ. And I believe that whether you're going to Liberty or not, this society right now, we need more champions for Christ. We need more people. That we need Christians in all walks of life, in politics, in education, in law enforcement, plumbers, electricians, car mechanics. I mean, we need more Christians. And I would just encourage anyone. And if any of your viewers have specific questions, my website is bobhamer.net. That's BOBHAMER.net. You can contact me at bob@bobhamer.net. Give me an email, and it may take me a couple days to get back to you, but I'll try to answer your questions.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Hamer, for joining me today. I've learned a lot. It's been such a good conversation. Guys, if you want to check out his website, it's in our description below. His books also, will link that to you guys. But thank you again, Mr. Hamer, for joining me. It's been a great conversation.
Thanks, Chuchu. I appreciate you having me.
All right.
God bless.
God bless you. I'll see you guys next time on Chosen Generation.